All right, so here we're picking things up here on page 258 of Sons of Providence. Okay, we are in the post-Revolutionary War era in the 1780s, and Moses Brown and his brother John continue to debate about the merits of the slave trade versus abolition. And here we are on log 258, and we talk about another state forming an abolition society. What state was that, Alan?
New York.
They did mention that, but the first one is
Connecticut.
no.
Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania makes sense because that's one most associated with Quakers, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So Pennsylvania Abolition Society, 1784, which is dominated by Quakers. And what are they trying to accomplish as an organization to help slaves, former slaves, stop the slave trade, whatever? Jamie?
They're like trying to like take on cases for like example, this is like later on, but like if like someone's like enslaved and they like think that they're eligible for like their freedom, then they can like petition the abolition society and they'll like successfully try to like get them out of slavery.
Yeah, good, right. Okay, so they're going to take on cases, they're going to hire lawyers, they're going to demand prosecution for violators. It's sort of like, you know, what the NAACP has been like over the last 100 years, or the ACLU, something like that, who can take on cases and try to get justice, okay? Alan mentioned New York. There's some big names in these. John Jay, who in the next couple of years is going to be named the first Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, is a member of the New York one. Dr. Benjamin Rush, who was a member of Congress during the Revolutionary War, who's friends with John Adams, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson. And then the biggest probably name of all, right at the end of his life, who joins? Benjamin Franklin joins, that's right, okay? So Moses is going to try to emulate that and form a society himself in Rhode Island in 1788. He's the obvious name to be the president. He makes a pretty smart move. He would rather see somebody else be president for what purpose? Why would that be, Danny? Right, he's hoping for a non-Quaker, okay, which I think a really smart political move. Because again, Quakers are a small group, they are not a particularly popular group, and they've got enough of a reputation for being rabble-rousers about this anyway, okay? And so he finds kind of his old rival, David Howell, is going to be able to do it, okay? Who had been railing against this before, but David Howell is going to end up being the head of it. He's going to do fine work as far as I know. Okay. So after they do this, their first confrontation is going to be with none other than a name we've seen before, and that is whom? Who are they going to confront? Yes, Josh?
Is it Emma?
Emma, and who's his partner?
Oh, John Brown.
No, Emlyn is with Moses. I'm sorry. Who are Emlyn and Moses trying to confront?
Is it Thomas Arnold?
No, Thomas Arnold is their friend. Cyprian Sterry. Where do we see that name before? Yeah, he was the New Bedford, I'm sorry, not New Bedford, the New London guy. Okay? He's trying to operate the slave trader, he's a slave trader trying to operate out of London. Yeah. So he confronted, or they confronted Cyprian Sterry, warning that they would prosecute if he violated the law. Remember, being involved in any way, very clear, in the slave trade is illegal, okay? And so Sterry promises that he is going to be just doing what with his ship in Africa? Yes, Jamie?
He's going to be like selling like ivory, gold. He's not affiliated with the slave trade.
Right. Is that true or is that just BS?
No, it's false.
Yeah, it is definitely a lie, okay? So Moses is going to, not fall for this stuff as time goes on. Okay, so what does John feel about this, okay? First of all, let's give kudos to the historian here. Okay, Rapalai is digging up a lot of first-person primary source documents here, and at the top of 260, this is a really cringe-worthy quote, okay? So I'll spare you guys from reading it, but somebody needs to read it, okay? But in my opinion, there is no more crime in bringing off a cargo of slaves than in bringing off a cargo of jackasses. They are property, they are subhuman, and they don't deserve anything else. Okay? So that was a heck of a score for Appalachia to be able to find that quote. Okay? And again, they're just, as Rabbi says, casual defiance of state law. Okay? They know it's the law, and they just don't care. Okay? And that's been John ever since he was a kid, right? Oppositionally defiant. So that continues on. Yes, sir.
How often were slave trade busts? Like, how often did they get busted by the law?
Okay, well, that's just getting started here, and you can see it's happening several times. Moses and his kind of watchdogs here are going to do it several times here. So, again, it just became a law. I know it's been a little while since we read this, but it's almost brand new. Okay, so he's defined the state law. So, Moses' society, which is eventually going to be called the Providence Abolition Society, is going to be formed on February 20th. And John Carter is a citizen of Providence. And what does John Carter do for a living, Lulu?
He's the Providence, he's the publisher of the Providence Gazette.
Providence Gazette. Is he going to give Moses plenty of space in his paper? Absolutely. But he's also a printer who needs to make money. He's also going to get plenty of space to
Citizens.
Yep, it's to citizen, right? The opposition. That's right. Now we don't know who citizen is, so just pretend that. Okay? We know that that's John Brown, right? Okay. So there are going to be a series of basically debates, okay, going back and forth, both in John Carter's newspaper and in another rival newspaper. Okay? Thomas Arnold gets involved. Okay? Being his pseudonym being a foe to oppression. Okay? I like that. Citizen answered back with a threat. 2 days later, Citizen's at it again with some quotes in the middle of 261. Okay? On 261, Citizen has a lengthy harangue, and he says slavery, quote, was right, just, and lawful, and consequently practiced every day, protected in the Constitution. He's showing extracts from Africa, showing tribal slavery and warfare to be an ancient tradition. He compares to the abolitionists as actually the lawbreakers. He calls it a wicked plan. Slaveholders were victims of abolitionist schemes to take away their property. Okay? So in a very short paragraph here in the middle of 261, John kind of outlines most of his argument there. Okay? The pro-slavery, and especially, let's stay on track of the pro-slave trade title that he has here. Okay? Alright. Moses feared, he didn't know, but he feared that Citizen was actually John. And he goes to John Carter, and does John Carter rat him out?
No.
He doesn't. I give John Carter a lot of credit for that. Doesn't rat him out. So Carter won't reveal it. So Moses is going to offer a detailed rebuttal himself. He has sat this out so far. Okay? So on 262, John and Moses admit to each other that they are the authors. Okay? And does that stop John from continuing on? John loves being the toast of the merchant elite, okay, from Newport and elsewhere, and he's going to continue to escalate. One of the things he does is he completely twists around the story of his runaway slaves. Okay? You see that at the bottom of 262. I knew that was coming the first time I read this book. Okay? How does he tell the story to make it in his favor? On the bottom of 262, top of 263. Jamie?
Well, so he had like 5 slaves, and I don't remember whether they escaped or if he set them free.
No, they escaped. He definitely did not set them
So
free.
they escaped, and then he's like telling a story about how he saw them in like rags and gauze, and he got them clothes, and then they were like begging to like come back into his house and serve him because it was like really cold or something.
Yep.
And then he was also talking about one of the others that like came back and like lived like married in like Boston or something, but he still returned to
He also
Brown,
returned, yeah.
even though like he like had a good life. And then the last one.
That's how great it was. That's how much they loved being slaves. Okay, according to John.
And then the last one was about the 5th runaway who he like to travel to Virginia. I think he got like hung and killed.
Yes, okay. So, not only did this 5th slave was he hanged and killed, but whose fault is it? No, it's not, oh yeah, it's not John's fault. It's not even the slave's fault. Who's he blame?
He went to Moses.
He blames Moses for doing that. He fixed the responsibility for a tragic death on the abolitionists and Moses in particular. So boy, this is a whopper, John tells, okay? Blaming the abolitionists for giving slaves hope and for pushing them to escape, and then this is what happens, okay? When they're not undermined, benevolent care, is basically what John's saying here, okay? Again, that's quite a whopper that he's telling, okay? All right, now, John is going to get into something that is incredible foresight he has here at the bottom of 263. I will give him a lot of credit for that. So look at about the last 10 pages, or 10 lines. Okay? It cannot be long before this state becomes a member of the Union. And that's true. Okay? Rhode Island's going to eventually ratify the Constitution. And I beseech you, in the most friendly manner, not to become the means of dividing the general government against itself by influencing the northern part through your mistaken zeal for the abolition of slavery to create a war between the two extremities of this confederacy. Okay? John basically predicts a civil war getting started over slavery and slave trade. Okay? Now, what we know at this time is, we don't know yet actually, but James Madison at the Constitutional Convention, which is right about this time, wrote that there were differences between North and South. It's not so much the big states and the little states, or the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists. It's mostly between the slave states and the free states. And Georgia and South Carolina hinted several times, you don't give us what we want, we're not in. Okay? So for John to kind of predict this is really insightful. Okay? Nobody else was saying this at this time. Okay? Again, the only person who comes to mind who knows anything about this is James Madison. And he and John Brown certainly aren't in correspondence with one. Okay? So that's pretty amazing foreshadowing that he has. Okay? All right. And again, he blames a future civil war on Moses Brown, on his brother. Okay? The abolition. All right. So moving over to 264. Moses now publicly, he doesn't have a stomach for this. Moses publicly asked to cease this correspondence, this back and forth in the newspapers. He also defends himself saying blaming him is ridiculous. Okay? Is Thomas Arnold done?
No.
He is not. So Thomas Arnold continues to do this. He demands a retraction from John. He then accuses John of being involved in the illegal trade in Jamaica. And he denounces him for abusing his brother, who, by the way, remember, saved your rear end, okay, when you were about to go to England for trial. What's John's response to that? Remember, Thomas Arnold was John's brother-in-law. So this is still within the family.
Doesn't like John start like digging up like dirt on Thomas Arnold?
He does eventually. The first thing he does is, hey, stay out of our business. Our relationship is fine. Okay? John?
It's between brother and brother.
Right. Right. You stay out of this. You're an outsider. Okay? And you're right that eventually this is going to get a little bit more personal between John and Arnold here. Okay? But I want to make sure and let you know, make sure that we're all on the same page here, that John just thunders back at him that between brothers and our relationship is fine. Okay. 265, the war of the word of words continue. I don't want to get into all the details there on 265, okay, but it is turning nasty. And one of the things he says about Arnold, and I'm not sure if it's right here or not, but one of the things he says about Arnold is, you just married my sister for the money, among other things. Okay, so pretty nasty stuff for the 1780s. Okay? It reveals, as we get into the bottom of 265 and the top of 266, doesn't this war of words reveal a lot more about the character of the authors than it does the subject? Okay? Remember, what's getting lost in this is, should we have a law, and should we be prosecuting people who violate the law? Instead, what does this say about John Brown? This escalating war of words. What do we know about John Brown to be true that's probably a continuation and nothing new? Josh?
Well, it's like this character's eyes will worry about being right and being defiant and like his own moral compass, I guess.
Yeah, so we see on the top of 266 some good words here. Pugnacity, brazenness, depth of his fury, okay? Remember we used that word visceral before, just this gut response, you know? And that's definitely John continuing on. What does it say about Moses? Which I think is a little bit more interesting to talk about here. Yeah, Jamie?
Well, I mean, obviously Moses is a lot more calm, and he would, I think the author was mentioning that he was like still like keeping track of like the debate, like even though like Thomas Arnold and like John Brown were getting very emotional and like attacking each other, Moses was kind of, he was still arguing about the subject of the matter and not like attacking John.
Yeah, okay, good. Yeah, no matter how nasty it gets, Moses does not attack John at all personally, and he's trying to stay on subject. And again, I said this before, he doesn't have the stomach for this sort of thing. What does it say about Thomas Arnold? I think it's kind of interesting too. Yeah?
I feel like he's trying his best to be the mediator between the two, but it's getting very difficult when there's two people's competitive natures on both sides being so strongly so strong to their topics.
Yep.
And now with John being so like personal about things and kind of getting away from the subject matter, it's making his job even tougher because he can't be a mediator if there's no reason involved.
Right.
So,
I mean, it reminds me of political debates today, okay? Are you ever going to get a right-wing whack job? Are you ever going to be able to reason with them and get them to change their mind? Or the same thing on far lefties. You're not going to be able to do that. And Thomas Arnold is not going to be able to change. And Moses definitely is not going to be able to change John's mind. What else about Thomas Arnold?
I was going to say he's definitely more like John in the way he attacks. And
Okay. He's not backing down, is he?
No, he doesn't. And he also goes personal too whenever he was saying,
Right.
like, how he abuses his brother. Like, that's not really, and it doesn't have anything to do with slavery.
Okay. So yeah, he's not afraid for confrontation, even though he's a lower rung in the family, right? He's not the alpha male in the family like John is. So he's not afraid to back down, or he's not going to back down. He's not afraid to argue with them. Okay. All right, good. Bottom of 266. John says that if Moses and Thomas did what? They'd be able to free every single slave in Providence. All you've got to do is what, Joey?
It says relinquish just a fraction of their estate.
Yeah. If you relinquish just a small percent of the estate that you inherited, okay? And where did that estate's money come from?
Well, that estate was built by slaves.
There you go. Okay. So you have lived a comfortable life based on the money that our families earned on the backs of slaves, okay, the slave trade over many decades. You're a hypocrite. Now, I'm going to challenge you to put your money where your mouth is, okay? You relinquish just a percent of those estates, and you'll be able to free whoever you want, okay? That's the kind of thing that John Brown would be very proud of coming up with, okay, to kind of paint his brother and his brother-in-law into a corner, okay, by doing that. Okay. Put your money where your mouth is. Okay? And so in 267, we're going to get out of this war of words and get into another case, because again, Luke was interested in the cases that were going on here. So all of that had been going on for over a month. Others get involved on both sides. And despite all the bluster, does anything change? Talk is cheap, right? Actions speak louder than words. Whatever saying you want to throw in there, whatever cliche you want to throw in there. But now we get some actual action. On 267, we have the beginning of what's called the Hope case. Can somebody give us just a little bit of a summary of what's going on with the ship, the Hope, and its captain? Jamie?
So, this man named Caleb Garner, he is a new port captain,
Yeah.
and he wants to go on the slave trade, but obviously it's illegal in Rhode Island. So he's making plans to change the name of the ship and register it in Massachusetts, and he accidentally sent the file to New Bedford, so New Bedford knows that he's involving himself in the slave trade.
Right, so like Cyprian's story before, who's a Rhode Island but does it out of London, just across the border in Connecticut, he's trying to pull the same thing just across the border the other way into the port of New Bedford, okay? Now let's remember that Caleb Garner's from Newport, and he is a prominent citizen. He's a Revolutionary War hero, okay? And boy, it's going to take some guts for the Abolition Society to take him on, no doubt about it. Okay, so yeah, he violates the slave trade law, he gets busted in New Bedford, and what ends up happening is Moses and his friends are going to prosecute them, and the trial takes place in March of 1791. Okay? All right, what happens with the verdict in this trial? And more importantly, what else happens as a result of it? Josh?
The slave traders were found guilty.
That's right. Moses and his crew won the case against Caleb Gardner. However, what else is the follow-up to that? Dan?
Basically, Massachusetts rules of the state statute couldn't actually say that the sailors couldn't, trade, that they couldn't trade slaves. It was kind of confusing, but like it said, like the new U.S. Constitution protected the slave trade in America, so they couldn't interfere with that.
Oh, yeah, they overcome that constitutional law thing. Well, let me rephrase that. Money. How does money become involved with this? Okay, Jimmy?
So they're trying to decide what punishment to dole out to Garner because he has a very good reputation. So
And the fines would be substantial.
Yeah.
So what does Moses and his Abolition Society want in regard to these huge fines?
They don't want to fine him a lot and be seen as like stingy and only going after it for the money because they want to be going after it for the principle, which is no slave trade.
The plaintiffs are due a big fraction of that money. Was it half? As plaintiffs, they will receive half the fines. So it's going to look bad for them that they just did this for the money. Okay? So what do Moses and the other prosecution decide as far as the fines?
They decide to only fine the ship and not fine
Okay.
them for. They don't fine the additional 50 pounds for every slave found on the ship.
All right, so they're going to go with a much smaller fine than they could have, right? Okay? They're not doing it for the money, they're doing it for the principle. And they're hoping that Caleb Gardner and others are going to learn their lesson and we can just go about abiding by the law and we're not going to have any problems. Did that work?
No.
No, it didn't work, okay? So let's talk some more about that. In fact, as it happens, the Hope goes to Africa 4 times in the next 4 years. So that very ship is going to continue to be involved. So they just don't care. Okay? They're going to keep doing it for the money no matter if it's legal or not.
Was there some sort of like Coast Guard or like guard that was watching these ports on the way?
No, that's a great question. There is no Coast Guard as of yet. Okay, the U.S. Navy exists, but that's not their job.
Yes.
Okay? So nothing really happens out in the open sea. It's when you come back into port. There's paperwork you have to do. There's customs that you have to go through. You depending on what the tariff laws are at the time, you have to pay tariffs for cargo and things like that. Do you think once in a while, depending on where you are, you might be able to avoid that by paying off or whatever? Sure. Okay. So it's great. Again, we give Raffle a lot of credit here as a historian. He tracked down a lot of paperwork and a lot of primary sources to be able to put this story together. Chris?
It also says that he went to in Newport, he also needed to put out more slave ships.
Yep, absolutely. So Gardner doesn't learn his lesson at all. Other people don't learn their lesson. Okay? So basically what ends up happening here is Moses was too cautious and maybe a little too good-willed. Okay, maybe they need to be a little bit more harder-nosed about this. So on 269, they switch gears and they not only talk about Caleb Gardner, but they talk about an emerging slaver out of Bristol named James DeWolf. And James DeWolf is a young man. Okay? We tend to talk about James DeWolf a couple of decades in the future. So just keep in mind he's a much younger man now. What is he infamous for us to have done?
Says that he strangled one of the slaves on the ship.
Yes, okay? A pretty infamous crime, okay, that's on his record. So let's move on then and talk about a guy named James Tom. James Tom. Could somebody give me the story of James Tom? So there's another showdown between Moses and John here coming up over a guy named James Tom, excuse me. Lulu.
James Brown was a slave during was a slave on one of John Brown private ships.
Right.
So,
Is he going to be set free or is he going to be forced to serve?
No, he was forced to serve,
Yep.
so then Miranda came to freedom.
Okay, good. So he's going to be pressed into service by John, as a privateer, and then he has to remain a slave on his merchant ships afterwards. Tom made it to port one day, and while he was in port, he can't be held as a slave anymore. Okay, so he wanted to be able to fight for his freedom in court, and this happens under the 1774 law. John is going to be angry about this for sure, okay? But is Tom going to be able to get his freedom?
Yes.
Yeah, he does. He does. So he's a little bit more intrepid than some of the other slaves, and he understands the law a little bit better, and he manages to kind of wiggle and put himself free. Okay? John tries to hold him hostage. Yeah, okay? John has a lot of angry things to say, okay, during this time period. You have as much of a right to the coat on my back as you do to my slave, okay? So basically, this is my property and you have no right to take it from me. So he's ticked off. So there's a good paragraph summarizing all of this in the bottom of 270, okay? Let's just have some people read that paragraph. Okay, Bo, you must start reading the paragraph that starts with Moses had prevailed.
Sure. Moses had prevailed again, having a period of remarkable gains in his campaign in slavery. In the space of just over 3 years, he had written legislation that struck at the heart of the American trade. Linking the primary slave ports in North America with the prohibition had already been tested in court under the provisions of the new federal constitution.
Okay, Chris, you want to take it up from there?
He had founded the sole abolition society in New England and had himself been named the regional correspondent to the society in Philadelphia. Rather than wait for the councils of Europe as the citizen advised, he had forged ahead, serving as inspiration to the Quakers in London, then struggling so far, unsuccessfully, to wrest a ban on slave trading from him.
Okay, so that's a great summary of all of Moses' accomplishments here in the mid to late 1780s, just in a few years, okay? And yet, was he really successful?
No, the slave trade's still going on.
Yeah, the slave ships just continue to pour out in Marietta Bay, okay? So there's a difference between holding success and paper success, and then looking out into the reality and seeing that Newport ship owners are involved with sending hundreds, I'd say probably in the hundreds of slaves down to the Caribbean, down south, you know, and sending them into slavery for the rest of their lives during that time period. Okay? And then, even worse than the fact that Moses feels like he's not being successful, who is the leader opposing him?
His brother.
His brother. And in his own mind, Rappelay does a great job of being kind of amateur armchair psychologist here. How can Moses reform the entire country if he can't even reform his own brother? Okay, redeem him. So that's going to be incredibly frustrating for Moses to have to deal with. Okay, when his brother is becoming more and more dug in all the time after it looked like there was a little bit of a thaw there, okay, about this. And believe me, it gets worse before it gets better moving forward. Okay? All right. So thank you for chiming in today. Does anybody have any questions about where we are?